And let's talk to a guy who you can always count on to do the right thing, and that is my friend, a man I'm very proud to call a friend. He is State Representative Robert Aderholt of the 4th Congressional District. Robert has been the congressman for that district since 1996 and does a great job, and he joins us, as he always does, right on time from his office in D.C. Congressman Aderholt, how are you?
Hey, Lee, it's good to be with you.
Likewise, good to be with you, Congressman. I appreciate it. Is there always kind of a buzz and if you will, a little excitement in the air when the president is going to address the joint session of Congress like he's going to do tonight?
Well, it is. As you know, this is a sort of a unique time when not only the House is together, but the Senate's together, and of course, the president's there, the vice president's there. All of the cabinet except one. They always hold one member of the cabinet back just in case there were to be some kind of disaster. But you've got everybody right there in one room, and so it's sort of an exciting place. Of course, the security around here, as you can imagine, at about this time before the State of the Union really tightens up. So it'll be helicopters hovering overhead, and so it'll be there's security always tight at the Capitol, but when this happens, it actually is heightened up to an enormous level.
And understandably so. Congressman, before we get on the issues, I get this question all the time from listeners, and I promised some listeners I would ask you this. People, they get frustrated about issues, so they call their congressman's office, or they send emails, or they send faxes, and some people are concerned that even when they do that, the congressman kind of live in a cocoon, so they don't really hear what their constituents are saying in the emails and the faxes, etc. Congressman Aderholt, you've been up there since '97. When constituents have a strong opinion on an issue, do you hear it? Do you sense it? Are you aware of the emails and the phone calls? How does that work?
Absolutely, and especially with the the way that as you say, emails and telephone calls. But telephone calls are still a great way because, more people every day are using the email system. But the phone calls are still a great way to put in a quick phone call, because sometimes you're trying to think of a way to address it. You may just find it easier to just pick up the phone. Every phone call that comes in through, I can't talk to everybody, and of course say every email. But usually, what the process is, it goes whenever Lee Davis calls up about a particular issue. Whatever issue that you have called upon goes to the person that I have assigned in my office to handle that issue. And then what we do is, before that vote, they're giving me feedback what they're hearing. So absolutely, I depend greatly on what constituents say to determine. It's always one of those things you have to weigh the pluses and the minuses. But generally, overall, I think it's invaluable what information we get from our constituents, and so therefore, just like the stimulus bill that we just passed recently, we had tremendous numbers of calls that came in, and we certainly pay attention to that. So I encourage your listeners, as well as anybody, whether they live in the congressional district I represent or one of the other congressional districts in the state, to call their member of Congress and to give their opinion on it.
But some say they get frustrated if they get an answering machine or they get a voicemail or something.
Well, you shouldn't get a voicemail. We try to make sure. Now, needless to say, that there could be somebody else on the call, but
sure.
I would say that if it's during regular business hours, then if you for some reason did get an answer machine or something, just call right back, because it means that maybe somebody was on all the lines are tied up and it's gone into that. But I would say that of course, in the email you don't have to worry about that. But I'd say that you should be talked to a live individual, and so that they can voice their concern about it.
Robert, let's talk about some issues. And you, like everybody except Congressman Davis and the Alabama delegation, I think rightly voted against this pork-laden stimulus package that the President and Speaker Pelosi jammed through, and Senator Reid jammed through Congress. But now that it's law, what about it specifically, Congressman, concerns you the most?
Well, I think overall I think the thing that's been most concerned to most Republicans is the fact that you're trying to address this problem with trying to stimulate the economy and doing it on the back of the taxpayer, and the tremendous cost of what's involved with this particular legislation and what the ramifications it'll have. There's no way of knowing I think there's probably some things in this stimulus package that probably will work. And I'm not one of those people who say that, there's nothing in here that works. There's probably going to be some things that work. What we have to be concerned about is at what cost is it going to work, and the fact that there's other ways that the economy could be stimulated or can be stimulated without going down the route. The Republicans had instead of just saying no to any proposals that the Democrats came out with, we came out with an alternative, and that was tax relief for working families and for small businesses, and it would create twice as many jobs, and it would be half the cost. And so those are things that we wanted this Congress to look at. Of course, the Democrat leadership chose not to go down that route. Right now, they control both houses, and since it's a numbers games up here as far as which party controls gets to decide the agenda, that's where we are. But at the same time, Republicans were not just saying no to everything. We were saying yes to a lot of other things. We just had some different ideas in mind. But I think the bottom line of your question goes back to the overall cost and how that will impact, and especially if this ramification goes up where we have to raise taxes.
Congressman, President Obama in his campaign made much about the importance of bipartisanship. He really made that one of his campaign mantras. But it didn't seem like, at least from where I sit, there was a whole lot of that in this negotiation process. It sounded like, to me, pretty much Pelosi wrote the bill and said, you guys either vote for it or vote against it. We don't care. We're going to pass it.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Lee, because, number one, I think the president has tried to reach out. And, of course, I did not vote for President Obama. I supported Senator McCain in the election. But at the same time, I do think there's been a large part that he has tried to reach out. One thing that I will, and I always like to give credit where credit's due, and I will say that I applaud the president for coming over to the Republican and spoke to the Republican conference just a couple of weeks ago. He came over and spoke to a room full of Republicans and Republican House members, and I applaud him for doing that. He did not have to do that. He chose to do that. I think the problem is that this bipartisanship message has not reached, the memo has not reached the Speaker of the House and the Leader of the Senate, Harry Reid. And so, therefore, what I think the president must do is say, listen, to the Speaker and to the leader on the Democrat side, on the Senate side, is say that we need to work together. And we need to listen to Republicans and let them have some input. But as I say, the memo just didn't get out to the Democrats on the House and Senate side, and therefore, as you say, they wrote the bill, and pretty much it was an up or down how we would either support it or we don't support it. And, of course, needless to say, there's not many Republicans, no Republicans on the House side. And people talk about it being a bipartisan bill. In some way it was a bipartisan against the bill because there were actually several Democrats that voted against. There were, I think, in the end, there were 7 Democrats that voted against this stimulus package, and 2 of them were from Alabama.
Right. Congressman Griffith and, of course, Congressman Bright. So, speaking of the president, Robert, what are you expecting to hear from the president tonight, and what would you like to hear from the president tonight?
Well, we're sort of still trying to figure out what his message is going to be, and I think one thing that we're seeing that probably what he is going to be talking about is his vision of how to go forward, and how to make tough choices, and of course in this environment that is certainly something that has to be a possibility. But one thing that I think that he needs to really focus on is the fact that since we are in a recession and since we are in the situation that we need to get back to fiscal responsibility, and that there's certain places for government spending, and we want the government to provide where it needs to provide, but certainly the kind of debt that we're increasing on our children and grandchildren is enormous. And so when the president's right, the Republicans will be one of his strongest partners. And, of course, when we disagree, we want to offer a better solution. And I don't think we should be the party, the Republicans should be the party that's always saying no. We should say, let's look at it, let's offer some alternative solutions, and we have been doing that. But, of course, some of the media, the national media, want to paint the picture that the Republicans are always wanting to say no to whatever issue comes up. and therefore we're the party of no. And that's just not the case. We want to work together and work with this president. So, while I don't really know the specifics of what the president is going to go into tonight, I do have a feeling that he's probably going to talk a little bit about the I wouldn't surprise if he talks a little bit about increases in taxes, and I think that's certainly the wrong route to go. Now, I think he will couch this in terms of this being one of those that only the rich will be taxed. What I think he may fail to tell you is the fact that a lot of small businesses will be taxed,
right.
And of course, small businesses employ more people than the big corporations that we think of, like of course, they would say General Motors, but that's probably not a good example to use at this point. But the small businessman provides a lot of jobs, and sometimes it could only be 10 jobs. But when you have 10 jobs multiplied many times throughout the country, those add up. So we've got to make sure that we're not penalizing people for trying to reach out and start new businesses, and that try to have businesses provide jobs. Just because they don't provide 2,000 jobs, somebody shouldn't be penalized. And so a lot of these, I think, unfortunately, is going to be aimed at small businesses, and unfortunately, they'll be crouched in terms of this is the rich, and that's who should be. That's where the tax will be going to. But again, that is just going to be passed down to the individual consumers. And then, of course, the small businessman will have to lay off people. So I think we have to look very carefully when he brings that up tonight, if indeed he does.
Robert, you mentioned a minute ago General Motors, both GM and Chrysler are saying now they need more money for the bailout. AIG is saying maybe they need more money. We heard the president's proposal last week about bailing out the folks that are defaulted on their mortgages. Where is this bailout madness going to end, Congressman?
Well, I can tell you, I think right now the American people are at a point where I think it would be very difficult for us to keep sending money out from Washington. I think especially after the stimulus bill and after the two bailout bills, I sense from my constituents, it goes back to, as you were talking earlier, that you get a feel from what the phone calls that we get in our office and emails. But I can't imagine that after the spending that took place with the stimulus bill, coupled with the two bailout bills that we worked on up here, that there's going to be any stomach to try to give more money out. So I think we've got to start looking for alternative ways. Just like I think we should have been looking at in the beginning when we did the bailout, like the mark-to-market concepts and those accounting principles that we could have worked on that doesn't really cost anything, but yet would have a tremendous impact. So, I'm sure that since a lot of people say Washington's giving away money, they're lining up to do that. But at the end of the day, I think that the Democrats are going to find it a hard press to try to explain that to the American people.
Congressman, I've got one or two questions, but I've got a quick break to take. Can I put you on hold real
Sure.
quick and ask you one or two more questions? Appreciate it very much. We'll continue our visit with Congressman Robert Aderholt of the 4th District from the state of Alabama. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back as we continue with Congressman Robert Aderholt of the 4th District in the state of Alabama. We appreciate the Congressman coming on with us very much as we get ready for the President's address to a joint session of Congress tonight, which, of course, will be televised by all the major networks. Congressman Aderholt, I've had a couple of listeners ask me about a bill that I think is in committee in the House of Representatives. It's sponsored by Congressman Bobby Rush from Illinois. It's H.R. 45, and it's something to do with licensing or firearms or recording a sales system about firearms. And some people are concerned it could maybe portend a very strict form of gun control. What do you know about this proposed legislation?
Well, the particular legislation that you're talking about, I have not seen read the legislation. I've seen it, but I can, I can tell you that I think that would be very unwise for Congress to move forward on trying to do any kind of gun control legislation at this point. Even though I think there's some in the Democrat Party that would like to push that agenda,
sure.
We do have, a lot of Democrats that join Republicans and say, gun control is not an issue that works. It's not an issue that we need to be embracing. And so, therefore, I think that the president would find it very difficult or any other member of Congress that may be trying to promote legislation like this would find it very difficult to try to get it through at this point. So I don't have I'll actually ask my staff to look that up and to see which bill that is, but I will be honest, we have not heard a lot of discussion about it up here, which hopefully means that it's not getting a lot of traction up here. Sometimes pieces of legislation, as you can imagine, there's thousands of bills that are introduced, and some of them, never really get out of the out of the committee or the subcommittee, and so they're but for whatever reason they're introduced, and therefore sometimes people will get wind of that legislation that has been introduced, and rightfully so. I'm thankful for people who raise those concerns about it when they hear it, because if not, of all the legislation that's introduced up here, sometimes we can be under a mountain of papers. So I appreciate your listeners calling attention to it, and we'll look into that and see what the rush bill would do, and try to alert everybody that believes in Second Amendment rights.
Robert, another issue that did pass, I think, a Senate hurdle today is an issue that will give D.C. a voting representative in the Congress, and it sounds like they kind of swapped out a little devil's bargain with the state of Utah to get another Republican district. But the way I look at it, Robert, it's almost unconstitutional, or maybe it is unconstitutional, to give people who do not live in a state a vote in Congress.
Well, when you hear the issue, Lee, it sounds like that the United States is being very unfair to the people who live in the District of Columbia. You say, well, they pay taxes, they live in the United States, but yet they don't vote. If you've ever visited Washington, D.C., or have recently, they have actually put a slogan on their tags up here which says taxation without representation. And the problem with that is, as you say, is the Constitution. The Constitution says that representatives shall come from the state. Mm-hmm. They set up the District of Columbia that it would not be a political entity, that it would be sort of I've sort of called it like a no man's land, in the sense that it is a federal enclave, and so therefore it is not to be represented by one particular individual, or have someone that could own the District of Columbia, but it's a federal enclave up here that's sort of an island unto itself. And I think that's the way it should be, and that's where the federal government should be. And I think it is a mistake to have D.C. have voting rights. Again, it's even though they're trying to work some kind of deal out that you're talking about with Utah, still the bottom line is the Founding Fathers, from the way I understand the Constitution. And I think if this bill did pass, I think you would see lawsuit filed immediately. And I think at the end results, the courts would say, the problem with this legislation is that it may sound good as far as giving everybody a right to vote. The problem is the Constitution. And the Founding Fathers thought this was not the best way to go. And, they had some very great insight into a lot of things. And so this is one of those things that I think that we have to we can't overlook.
Robert, real quick before we let you go, there's a lot of talk about card check legislation as far as companies or employees becoming labor union members is coming before Congress. It looks like with the makeup of Congress right now, Robert, that may be very hard to stop.
Well, that's what I've looked at the numbers, and I think it would be difficult. However, I do think there are a lot of Democrats. I know that even some of the Democrats in our own state of Alabama have said, there's some real concerns about that legislation. So while I do think that the numbers seem to be on that side, I think, having a secret ballot is just the American way. And to get away from that concept and to say that, you don't have a secret ballot when it comes to issues as far as unionization or whatever, I think it's totally a mistake. So, certainly unions, they have a place, and we need to make sure that they're allowed to operate. But to go with where you don't have a secret ballot and allow the people to decide for themselves what they want to do and to join the union, I think would be a terrible mistake.
Yeah, if union membership is so wonderful, why the union's afraid of a secret ballot? That's what I don't understand.
Well, what is, of course, as well as I do, there'll be some of those within the unions will put undue pressure on those where
right.
they can't say no. And therefore, this should be a decision where the workers of a particular company, if they want to go union, that should be their decision, and by secret ballot. If they decide to, then that's the way it should go. But if it should not be something where the union representatives are putting pressure a company's employees of whether they should go down that road.
Congressman Aderholt, we could go on and on. I'd love to do it, but I know you're very tight on time. You're getting ready for the speech tonight. Thank you so much for being so generous with us this afternoon.
We'll try to do it again soon, Lee.
We will do it again. I promise you, Robert. Thank you so very much.
Right.
God bless.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. That's Congressman Robert Aderholt from the 4th District of the state of Alabama. What a nice guy. What a good congressman. We appreciate his great work and we appreciate his time, and we will get him on again very soon.